Hi everyone. Thanks for going to class, I guess. I hope that this video is helpful for you. I'll go over some of the processes that lead to desertification. I always have such trouble saying that word, desertification. So I'll go through the processes. Too long didn't read TLDR is basically there is no set process for desertification, but it's more of an interconnection of human activities and natural processes. You'll often find that both of them work hand in hand as to why we have deserts overtaking areas. So it's actually really quick. I won't actually take too long. I actually promise you this time. I've asked questions throughout the video, throughout the keynote that I'd just like you to answer. And if you've taken notes, that's great. However, you're doing your notes, keep it up and just answer those questions that I pose. And I'll talk about some of those as well. So yeah, I suppose we can get into it. And this is my cat. Hi, Dr. Peppa. Say hi to the geographers. Let's get into it. Okay, so just make sure you've read pages 133 to 135 in our textbook. Nice and short for the processes of desertification. So like I said, there's no single cause, but the main factor here is that there are interconnections. This is basically human activities and climatic variation. So they do occur naturally, but human activities, it's quite evident that we've actually exacerbated it. So just keeping in mind what processes, well, we can branch them off into four different, factors that create these bad boys, these deserts. So we've got our environmental factors, our social, our economic, and our political factors. They're very, very simple and very, very easy to remember. So first off with the environmental, just remembering that basically desertification is a loss of vegetation. So vegetation is lost in that area, or if it's in dry lands, it's almost completely gone. But deserts, there's literally no vegetation. So if it's dry land, it will have some sort of vegetation that have adapted for that environment. Now, I guess it's really obvious what causes it. Deforestation, being one of the main ones we've looked at. So that removal of forests will expose soils to wind and water erosion, degrades the soil, the land there. Agriculture, of course, is one of the biggest ones for deforestation. It is also one for deserts as well. So, who would know? Who knew that trying to keep the human population alive could be so devastating? I suppose it's our methods of creating enough food for people that is potentially causing this as well. Prolonged drought. So it's not actually drought that will cause that desertification. However, it's prolonged drought with unsustainable land use that's contributing to desertification. So what I mean by unsustainable land use, I mean like it might be overgrazing of the land, or it might be agricultural practices where there is excessive farming on the land. So that's what I mean by it's not sustainable. The land actually never gets to recover. So combine that with drought, you're going to get desertification. As I mentioned, climate change, of course, the effects of climate change, it just compounds the problem of vegetation loss. So if we've got increasing temperatures, we are going to have some ecosystems or biomes that are going to become smaller, degraded, things like that. And I guess it can work the other way around as well. When temperatures are dropping, there's a change in ecosystems that can lead to vegetation loss. And we've spoken about this so many times. Excessive water, too much water is a bad thing. So causing that water table to rise, and you have that salinization of the land, and obviously the vegetation dries off. It's not adapted to that salinity. Look up, do this right now, Google Lake Eyre in South Australia, and you'll get a really good example of salinization of that lake. It's just, or even looking up in Bolivia, the salt tables as well. So naturally occurring, of course, but humans can cause that problem too with agricultural practices. So I mentioned earlier, I've created some questions for you as we're going along. Answer these, please. So rather than just copying out these notes, you've got the keynote here. Why copy these? You've got them, just read them. So rather than copying these out, respond to these questions to help you understand and remember these things. So why does loss of vegetation through these various processes promote desertification? So I'd love for you to just be able to explain how deserts are being created because of these things. How can you explain that to someone? So try and structure your paragraph or whatever you're writing in a way that you can explain this to, I don't know, if you've got a sibling, your younger sibling, like in year 7, how would you explain it to somebody in year 7? Okay, is a really good way of thinking about it. I also have a link here, Wikipedia. You know I love Wikipedia. It's gotten me through most of my uni degree. This gives a good overview of the environmental, of all causes basically, but you'll notice there's a lot of environmental, of desertification. Next one here. So we know we love maps. So this is figure 9.8, page 133, and it's just the changing climate patterns in the Sahel. Now, what's the Sahel? It's this region here. The Sahara Desert, or the Sahel, is what we're talking about here. So just a brief explanation. Well, I mean, I want you to describe what's happening in this map. So perhaps use your PQE to be able to mention this. Just notice your rainfall zones. So this really light color is 250 to 500 milliliters per year of rainfall. And that deeper green color is over 1.1 meters of rainfall per year. So you can see the closer we get to the equator, the more rain that's occurring. The next thing to look at is your isohet, which are these dotted lines here. So if you're not sure what an isohet is, I've given you the definition. It is a line on a map that has given the same amount of rainfall in a given period. In this case, millimeters per year. So looking at here, we've got this first line here. So there is about 200 milliliters of water each year. Note the color of it. It's this light blue. That is the time period of 1940 to 1967. The darker blue, you've got 2 lines here. So this one here, that is the 1968 to 200. What you're seeing here are 2 different lines. Okay. You can hopefully notice that there is a change in the milliliters as well. I'd like you to explain what's happening here. So you'll notice that this isohet line is moving south towards the equator in this case. So your job here is to explain what is happening in this map. What is happening to, I guess the hint here, what is happening to the Sahara Desert? Okay, so have a shot at that, and we'll talk about it next class. Social factors. So interesting fact, 2.5 billion people live in dry lands. Answer this. Why does this drive desertification? Why 2.5 billion people are causing deserts to expand? Now, the key things to remember here, people need water, food, building materials, fuel wood. So how do these influence this? If you can answer that for me. Now, the Sahel region, just straight from the textbook, the Sahel region is to have 300 million inhabitants by 2050. This is going to be met with a 60% increase in food demand. This means that 121 million hectares, now that is more than the land of New South Wales and Victoria combined. We need to the nations of Africa need to pull that out of somewhere. That's 120 million hectares of land. If we're using our current farming practices, they need to somehow find this kind of land. Where are they going to find it? They're probably going to chop down trees to do that, yeah? Oh my goodness. So they need to find that much land. So here's my question or my consideration for you. Rather than finding 120 million hectares of extra land, How can societies meet the demands of extra food and water requirements? Okay, do some research if you need to. Have a think about it. I'm trying to get you to tap into your knowledge that you have now and come up with some solutions. This is some higher order thinking stuff, yeah? An extra hard question for you if you want to challenge yourself. If you don't want to challenge yourself, skip it, but I'll be really disappointed. How can they then be able to provide building materials and fuel sources? So, okay, easy. How do we fix that? Easy. How do we fix all of this? That's a little bit hard. If you were in charge, what would you do about it? Okay, so I'm looking for about a paragraph there. A chart here, you know, I love charts just as much as I love maps. So over here, we've got our population in thousands, so 100,000 to 700,000. I'm sure in the age of coronavirus, we're seeing lots of different types of charts here. So I hope we're getting really good at reading them. Along the bottom, we've got our year. Now, this is the overview of population growth in the Sahel region. So where are we? We are, oh my God, I nearly said 2010. We're 2020, the year that we want to forget about. Population in the thousands. So sorry, yeah, I should have pointed out, this is population in thousands. So this is 100,000, okay? So put an extra 3 zeros on there, that's 100 million, okay? So if we look at 2020, we just got under 200 million people in the Sahel region right now. And remember, by 2050, they're saying 300 million. So here it says 339,886,000 people in the region. Look at this, in 80 years, they're expecting over 500 million people living in the Sahel. So remember, the Sahel is this region here, okay? Crazy. Now, explain what is happening in this graph, please. So use your PQE to formulate your answer. Now, this is a little bit tricky, and I just grabbed this question from the actual questions in the textbook, but create a flow chart that shows the vicious cycle that can develop in regard to desertification as a result of increased populations of drylands. So I want you to think of, okay, population increase, what does that cause? What problem does that cause? Name that problem. Then that problem causes what? Name that problem. That causes what problem, okay? You're gonna find there's actually a cycle. This population growth, we're getting stuck in this cycle. This population is not decreasing, it's going to exacerbate problems. I wanna know what problems. Show me that you know what problems are gonna be created with population growth in regard to desertification. So second last one, our economic. Now, there's pretty much one main category here that can be further broken down, but poverty. So overgrazing, which is so the unsustainable use of cattle, sheep, or goats to graze an area, severely changing the land cover, and then overcultivation. That is a result of using the land so much without letting it regenerate, it becomes nutrient poor and not economical for use. So how do these link? Well, how do they link to poverty? Sometimes people have no choice but to change the land cover to survive. This is all about survival and people trying to lift themselves out of poverty. To do that, they tend to overgraze and they tend to overcultivate, okay? So a lot of these problems are to do with population growth, hint, hint, increasing populations of herds, hint, hint. So explain how these are economic factors that contribute to desertification. Why are these considered economic? Okay, so what is it that's making this economic? The key thing is poverty, okay? I just gave you the answer pretty much, but explain to me why these are economic factors causing desertification. I remember being in humanities when I was in year 9, and my year 9 history textbook was my favorite because I loved looking at diagrams, and I still love diagrams. I love this diagram. We've got traditional land use pre-1970s for the Sahel region. Have a look, love it. Great artistry. And then we've got it in the 2000s. Huge differences. As Donald Trump says, huge differences here. I want you to describe to me what is happening with land use patterns pre-1970s and in 2000s. Outline the differences between land use patterns in these two time sequences. After that, you should be able to answer this. Why is the Sahara Desert moving south? Sahara Desert? Oh my God, it's so much bigger here. Why is it moving south? By now, I hope you can be able to explain this to me, okay? Lastly, how easy is this? Political. Basically, the regions that we're looking at, there is huge amount of pressure for governments to provide basic human needs. And this, more often than not, overrides the environmental decision. So rather than looking after the environment, they're going to look after their population first. However, they can be really short-sighted. So looking after the population first, rather than the environment, it might not be obvious to them. It might be obvious to the population, but hopefully it's obvious to you and us that by not looking after the environment now and prioritizing the population, future populations are going to suffer even more, okay? So these short-term solutions will promote long-term problems. So I've got these two tasks here. How have changes in government policies on borders caused desertification? Please read the text. There's a little hint in there for you. So I want you to think of how, we're very if you don't have a passport, you ain't crossing no border nowadays. So I want you to think about the way we try and contain things and how that's, and that's a government policy, so that's political. How's that actually caused desertification? And then lastly, explain how conflict, so when we say conflict, so I'm talking wars. Now, we're living in you might think it's a pretty peaceful time, but there are actually a lot of civil wars occurring and conflicts in Africa, for example, the Sahel. So I want you to explain, how is that causing desertification? How is a war causing desertification? So think about it, have a look at the text. Hopefully at this stage, after looking at all these examples, having you go answering these questions, you can then be able to answer this question. Okay, so that is all I have for you. Okay, what did I tell you? I said that was going to be quick, okay? I'm going to keep this ending quick as well. Look, I hope my very, very quick overview of those processes are a bit clearer. I think once you've answered those statements in those orange texts, it'll become clear for you as well. You do this for me, I will release a video that answers those questions. So you'll have to subscribe to my YouTube channel or go onto Canvas to actually see those answers. So yeah, I'm on my emails. Please feel free to jump on the emails. Let me know how you're going. If we do need to have like a study period this Friday, I am absolutely happy to accommodate that. But let me know. If no one says anything, I'm going to assume everything is all good. And we'll keep going. So anyway, look guys, I hope you have a great day. I'm looking forward to seeing you guys next Wednesday in an actual classroom. Hopefully you got the letter explaining the processes of returning. So I know I'm looking forward to seeing you all. I'm looking forward to everyone keeping their distance and looking out for each other. I know you guys will be respectful of that. But anyway, I'll see you in the next video. All right, have a good one.